Unfiltered. Like you're in another world, like you zoned out.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unfiltered with Georgii Speakman. This week we are welcoming guest Suzy Kilkenny to the show. She is an amazing and dynamic executive with an incredible track record of connecting diverse creators such as founders, artists and entrepreneurs with capital and commercial opportunities. I've had the opportunity of working with her historically, and she's just amazing. Her career expands leadership roles and iconic publications such as Interview and Vogue, where she's collaborated with some of the most amazing and world-class creatives and artists in the world, driving substantial revenue, building innovative products and services, and totaling nearly $1 billion in revenue, which is incredible. So congratulations to you, babe. That's unbelievable fate. But today we'll hear all about SKPC, the world of Suzy, and how she's really penetrating the brand, that intersection of brand, media, founders, and all the rest today, knowing that the landscape has shifted, I want to say, tremendously, particularly since COVID. But welcome to the show, Suzy. I'm stoked to have you here, babe.
Georgii, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, you were such an inspiration to me when we were working together. I think it was back in like 2018, or was it later? Was it the early 2020s?
It was during COVID. It was early 2020 because
yes,
we
that's
launched.
right. Because I had just relocated to Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you were working with Mick and lots of other creators and different media outlets and platforms at the time. And it was weird because we connected at a time where COVID and everything just obviously shape-shifted industry as we know it. I remember like brands and whole range of people came to a standstill to sort of like work out what on earth the future of doing deals with talent and brands and in the media landscape and all the rest looked like. But I want to hear your take on how that time has impacted or changed business, still up into this day, for the better or worse. What is your take?
Oh, interesting. So before I answer, I just want to point out, so when we connected, I was at Maxim.
Yes.
And that was my first turnaround. And I was coming off of like a really successful, probably like 3.5 years, no, maybe 4 years, where we had turned the company profitable for the first time in its history. It was under new ownership, this like young entrepreneurial ownership, really focused on connecting the brand to culture, elevating the content, working with tons of creators and talent across all genres. And then everything stopped. Like we couldn't do photo shoots. We couldn't do the events that were really important to the business. And it gave me a couple minutes to just be like, you know what, I'm going to try these things that I could not like dedicate the space and didn't quite frankly have the time to do because we were just at home. And talent management would be hitting me up like, hey, are you doing anything? Like my talent's at home. And you and Mick, it was like the perfect time. Mick was like, let's do a podcast. I'm like, I've been wanting to do a podcast, but I had absolutely like no time. And I think we did like 20 plus episodes that were great with like, we kicked it off with D Nice. Like there were such great people that participated. So that was so fun. And that time period, I also did a couple other things where like I just let really creative people use the YouTube channel, Maxim's YouTube channel, where we like created content live and people would tune in. So it was just a really experimental time that I really appreciated because it got me into spaces that I wouldn't have otherwise had the time to do.
Yes, and 100%. And I learned a lot from you at that time because it was just yet another platform. Even though I think I had my own show back then too, or maybe I'd already axed it by, just as COVID hit, perhaps as amidst my relocation. But your whole approach was very innovative and you had so many incredible ideas as to how to bridge the gap with all that intersection of, again, talent and brands and just how everything was viewed and spoken about and done. So having said that, we're now 2025 and I feel like the world has been faced with a whole other set of issues and all the rest. I feel like COVID, has kicked off a whole bunch. But what are you seeing as the biggest changes in industry that have, I guess, changed the face of the business and also the way you've been able to conduct yourself in that space?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much. That seems like so long ago
I
to
know,
me.
I know it feels like
And I
50,000 years ago,
do
but
really reference like a lot of things that I was exposed to like
Mhm.
during COVID time period. But I mean, at this point, it was a while ago. And today, it's so interesting because I've been involved in a number of ventures since then. You know, I left to start Group Black with friends of mine
Yes.
that had this opportunity. And that was like right on the heels of, 2020, post George Floyd, supply chain diversity, DEI, and built a really exciting, super cool business that drove a lot of
Yes.
impact. And over that time, we weren't like from a B2B perspective, I can't say that like AI was really in my vernacular at that time, but once that started, like everything really just started changing. And so today, I feel like we're in a drastically different place for a number of reasons. Obviously, like the technology has evolved. I spent a little bit of time in blockchain, which was really eye opening for me. But the consumer has changed. Like the biggest shift I think that I'm experiencing right now is this shift in
Yes.
the three youngest generations alive today, like millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, just behave so there's like so many communities and
And that's an
trends
understatement, Susie.
within, and so really understanding how behavior has changed as a
Right.
result of like all these things, the
Yes.
pandemic, technology, this like the political climate, like
Yes.
what's happening in the capital markets. It's just a wild time, and when things are so chaotic and kind of crazy, for me personally, it always makes me feel like there's a big opportunity. So I like finding people who are creative and like really understanding something and seeing like if there's an alignment where I can add value to what they're doing because I think what they're doing is really interesting and I don't know how to get there. So I kind of like the chaos a little bit. It like helps me find beacons of light in different places.
I absolutely love that. And this is what I love about you and why I've to have you on the show, because you've always had such a innovative lens. You've always led conversations and different moments with a different perspective. And you strike me as someone who's able to take all the different changes and then be opportunistic, but in a really meaningful, intentional way. Like you spot the opportunities and go, okay, times are changing. You're very pragmatic, you're realistic, you identify what isn't working anymore. How can we, yeah, to your point, how can we find those moments of light? And you raise an interesting point about politics and all the rest. And there's just so many different spokes on the wheel now that feel more polarized than ever, but also at the same time still so interconnected. How do you um, navigate such a discombobulated but sort of interconnected and forever changing landscape in this world of like brand media and talent?
Yeah, I mean, personally, there's a couple things, but I think generally it's really just like staying focused, really staying focused on what I'm working on. And it's really easy for me to get distracted and be like, oh, NIL, that sounds really interesting. I'm like
Totally.
watching all these sports things
Right.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's in sports in some way, shape, or form. And I'm like, no, 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 stay over here. Like, that's not where you're focused. So it's hard for me, but I've gotten, I think, pretty disciplined at like focusing on the projects that I'm working on and the lanes that I'm in more generally. Like I'm a very curious person, so I always want to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just have to keep myself focused. And I do, like, over the past couple years since I've been working on my own, and consulting in different capacities, I've been able to really take advantage of, just like lifestyle, being healthier. Like I work out all the time. I mean, I always have my entire life, but really intentional about how I spend my time and like what workouts I'm doing. Mindfulness is something that's become really important to me. I spent like 6 months working with Still Life, a startup in kind of like stillness in the mindfulness space in Venice, California. And prior to that, I really didn't have any exposure, and that was completely game changing for me. So
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. You've always found ways to pop up and find source opportunities in all the most progressive of spaces. Um, how was your time in blockchain, and how do you manage the world of Web3 with Web2 or Web 2.5? Because there are still a lot of differentiation and not a lot of crossover. Like, just from speaking from experience, when I was working with Web3 startups, one of the biggest challenge was mass adoption and the
right.
education component and piece. And we found that we spent more time in all three different instances, like IPFS versus like NFT marketplaces and publishers versus something that's more crypto driven, educating and how to get the buy-in from the ultimate decision maker. So it was almost like too hard. How do you navigate that world where there's so much proliferation of industry?
Well, so personally, I'm still learning, and I find myself attracted to spaces where I can learn something, just wanting to know like what's happening, especially when they're buzzy areas. That's kind of how I got into data
Yes.
like 10 years ago, which I
Yeah.
never had any idea at the time that it'd be so valuable for me.
Right.
And so that happened with blockchain, where someone I had worked with in the past was working on a new venture, and they needed help with their branding and marketing and just, like really kind of business development. And I was really excited because it was blockchain. I'm like hearing about this. I have crypto, like I'm by no stretch, you know, well versed in this space, but I have NFTs. I like bought things 5 years ago, you know what I mean? And so now, like seeing the use cases and working with experts in this space and really understanding the benefits of blockchain really opened my
Hmm.
eyes. And to your point, like the education, I think, is not there, but you're starting to see a lot of progress happen
Yes.
under this new
Yeah.
administration, which is
Yes.
definitely, in my mind, a positive thing. And, that space, the people that I worked with were really young and really opened my eyes
Hmm.
to like their understanding of the utility of
Yes.
blockchain. And like
Yeah.
for most of them, because we were in the fintech space, they view blockchain as kind of like the new Wall Street.
Yes, exactly. The
And
new
I
god
really
to
found that
finance.
fascinating. Went to Consensus, went to like a bunch of the meetups and shows and conventions, and very different experience from a lot of the professional industries that I'm used to. But at the same time, like you need those early adopters. I think that the technology itself, like all the experts will tell you, there's a lot of value there, and it's just a matter of time. And I think
Exactly, a
like
matter of
that
time.
time's happening now. Like you're
Yeah.
starting to see so many cool projects happen that I love, like that are just making products and services that weren't accessible to the average consumer now more accessible, and in very like transparent ways.
I definitely feel like blockchain is having its own type of resurgence. Like it all popped off around COVID and a couple of years after that. And then the industry took a bit of a nosedive again for whatever reasons, but it's definitely seeming like it's a couple of years later, 2 or 3 years later, it's definitely having a bit of a resurgence. What would you say are the most innovative driven conversations that you're having with brands and in the spaces that you operate in? Like, how are brands, to your knowledge and talent and all the rest, responding to the likes of these innovative technologies, whether it's Web3, blockchain, crypto, NFTs, IPFS, versus the likes of AI?
Yeah, I think for the most part, like my time is spent at the intersection of the creator economy and media.
Yes.
And I'm really, I spend a lot of time with working with different creators and these creator agencies. And there's one in particular where they're just really young, really smart, really dialed in Gen Z. And, helping them build their business and connect with brands. And more like, I think the big opportunity is for them, is for, creators to be like the hardworking media of today.
Yeah.
And so coming from a traditional media perspective, like the hardworking media impressions that used to be, that are today, like still television and digital and like growing across social, I feel like creators are just really good at amplifying at scale a lot of content, like all types of content and programming. So most of my time is spent working in that like media creator space, and that intersection and how brands get involved in that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then are you feeling like talent are having a good response to the likes of AI and the future of it? And where, has that conversation arisen much? Or you still feel like it's too sort of early days?
no, I mean, I'm seeing some really cool things that are created using AI from a content perspective. I'm like trying to stay focused on the projects that I'm working on right now. And so I pay attention and I demo and I see like a lot of these AI, oriented or powered products,
Yeah.
which I think are amazing. And from like an ethics perspective of the origin of creativity, or the ownership and access of IP, like all of this gray space, haven't really I like pay attention. I can't say that I have like an opinion on it yet. But from just a general utility perspective, like using any sort of like AI solution has made my day so much more productive. So
I love to
that
hear that.
that being said, like when it comes to creative, that's like a whole different a whole different area that seems to be like very divisive right now.
I know. So I feel like some of the conversations out of cities and markets like LA might
Yeah,
be a bit different
completely.
to some others because they're at the forefront there of just, where are us managers and agents going to be, if, all the things. There's millions of
Yeah, but it's
questions that are,
happening everywhere,
yeah.
right? And like, I don't know that anyone has like the answers of like what's going to happen. And there's a lot of speculation. And I feel like my time is best spent just making sure that I'm aware of what's going on in this
Yeah.
space, but I can't really do anything more because it's not a good use of my time because
Yeah.
no one knows what the outcomes are going to be.
Yeah.
But I do feel like just generally, times are changing. And so like legacy industries are evolving. And so the way in which things once were is no longer. You can see that in like, Airbnb
Yeah.
and Waymo. And so it's just in my mind a matter of time. And it's like, how can you set yourself up for success? Like, how can you still do the best work? Like excellence is always the North Star. Take advantage of the, new and improved solutions that are available to you. But, I think creativity is, also like at the core. So how does everything coexist in
Yeah.
a framework that is going to be viable from like every perspective? Like, I just don't know what that looks like yet.
No. And so having said that, how do you navigate consulting to clients and giving them advice as a result? Because that's going to look a multitude of different ways depending on the deal and the scenario and the situation and what everyone's trying to accomplish. But is there a particular trajectory, train of thought, way, style, or what have you, in terms of your approach to help lead and guide talent and brands and that intersection of media and all the rest into the future? What does that look like?
So I don't know that I'm like providing advice per se. I'm definitely staying on top of thought leaders across the spaces that I mentioned. So I'm like
Yes.
pretty well versed in what people are doing, but I'm game to like try anything. And I like working with people who are like, let's try this. Like, we
Yeah,
don't know what's going to
for
happen,
sure.
but it's better to know and have tried and failed than like not try at all, just like sit on the sidelines, speculate. Like, I'd rather just do things
And
and,
dive in.
yeah.
The
So
best way to become an expert in said area is literally doing the work, diving in and challenging yourself by,
completely.
yeah. And I
And
feel like,
asking for forgiveness.
yeah, later for sure. And in that industry, because I feel like I used to do it a lot when I was working with talent. Is it's you have the opportunity to learn so hard and fast if you focus and double down intentionally to learn and create. But I don't think avoidance is the answer. Avoiding the conversation isn't going to help anyone because I feel like it has to now fundamentally be somewhat a part of the dialogue. You know, no matter sort of what side of the fence you're on. If you're doing go to market strategies with startups or doing talent strategies with brands or whatever, yeah. I had just met a girl last night who's like a creative technologist for both agency and Coca-Cola. And the things, the conversations, and what she's being asked to do is like very, very exciting. So I feel like we're going to see more of that intersection of talent crossing over almost as fractional services in innovation and you know, future tech and AI and stuff like that with these major brands. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Oh, definitely. I mean, do you remember when I think it was like in the early days of social media? Um, and just generally around when like the VC space in Silicon Valley became like
The
a
thing.
big,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like all of these traditional companies, whether it was like Ford or I think it was like Nordstrom, because I was working in luxury and retail, like set up these incubation labs. So like
Yes.
everyone was
Yeah.
like racing to create an
Yeah.
incubator. And so I
Yeah.
kind of feel like hopefully that doesn't happen again. It's more like these tools are available to you like anywhere from your phone and every other device. Like let's try them and figure out. You should just know. Like I think you should just try because that'll give you like a better sense of what's possible as opposed to just like having an opinion without actually seeing something
Yes,
work.
that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Moving from a place of openness as opposed to fear because not AI is the likes of AI and other innovations are obviously not going anywhere. So it's really a question of how do you leverage it? How do you think about it? How do you utilize it? How do you
And I'm
implement it?
sure it's going to change, right? Like it'll evolve into something that becomes like in
The
this
norm?
capitalistic society, like it's going
Yes.
to evolve into something, some sort of like marketplace. But I'd rather just be learning or like involved early and learning what not to do as opposed to like showing up late. And it does work for somebody, for some, companies and businesses and
Yeah,
sectors. I feel like luxury is always like kind of late to the game, but it has its, advantages in that case.
absolutely.
So,
What kind of tools? Because I feel like ChatGPT is probably the biggest, most easily accessible, and perhaps beneficial to the everyday human and the masses at every level, whether you're a top tier executive or a stay at home mum that is like researching recipes. What's your take on ChatGPT as that type of marketplace that you mentioned, and or do you have other tools that you love to use in the work that you do that you'd like to recommend?
well, I mean, I have so many and like some that I've only like tested once. And I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the regular tools I use are now all AI enabled. So, like, my experience with them, like from any Google product to like Adobe products, Canva as an example, like they all now just have such better servicing because the capabilities are just so much better.
Yeah.
And I use like ChatGPT, I use Gemini quite a bit. I use Perplexity. I'm trying to think. There are a
Can you
couple.
break down what, just for the listener that are curious and like navigating the space, are you able to break down in what areas that you use these tools?
Well, so I try everything, because like Gemini is really convenient for me, so I use that all the time. Like the OpenAI products, I've tried multiple where I think I'm just not that informed. Like I don't really know the difference with exceptions. There are that can like do a lot more
Yeah.
processing. And I think like Perplexity, I just really like the experience on the app. What I'm really interested in doing, so I take a lot of courses, like online courses when I want to learn something because it's so
Good.
easy.
Yeah.
And so like ServiceNow has like great education and kind of like gives me ideas of like other things to try. There's no shortage of people in my chats and like other places that are like, I use this for this and I use that for
Right.
that. So I, again, like I have to stay focused, but I'm always like, oh, what was that? Like how, when it comes to like deck design or, um, updating, like calendars and spreadsheets and things like that. So it's never perfect, and I feel like sometimes maybe it takes me more time to go back and fix things. But again, it's like early days in many cases.
It
So
is.
I try to like figure out what can plug into my work process. And then that becomes like something that I use. So
Would you say your goals there personally are just like literally increase, operational efficiencies, time efficiencies, and things like that?
yeah, absolutely. And I see that happening. I think I probably take it for granted a little bit, and then I hear really great use cases from like clients and friends and people that I'm in touch with, and that goes on my like, okay, I need to do that on Friday. Like I have to like figure out, like I have to test drive this and see like if this is going to work for me. And there's just little things, like so many of the apps I use have really gotten so much more um I don't know, like just so much more supportive, right? Like I
Mhm.
use Clay and it like tells me when someone updates something on LinkedIn, which is great. Like I don't want to be in LinkedIn all day. I
Wow.
have to
Yeah.
like focus my time.
Yeah.
So I just feel like everything around me is getting better, which is making me more efficient without stressing myself out. I'm not trying to like get hours back, although I do like try to minimize the like time on my phone, like different how I spend time different places.
It's interesting because I feel like I was in LA and you were obviously continue, you still very, very active in industry as you are today back then, but watching all it's like in the spirit of capitalism, where all the larger players just keep buying up all the startups in the space and dissolving them. And it's like a game of Pac-Man. I remember thinking in LA, I was like, oh my God, the money that is
Yeah.
being flown around, like trickles down from Silicon, Valley down to Silicon Beach, being Los Angeles. And just watching all the baby startups that are doing hot things in industry getting gobbled up. I feel like the same thing's going to happen in AI, where we right now see the emergence of lots of these, user generated generative AI type tools and all the rest. I feel like the larger conglomerates and players will keep gobbling them up. And, as the DIY space continues to proliferate, it's really, really interesting. Um, but that leads me to my next question. It's been a minute since I've managed talent, and I don't know if you're currently managing anyone now and today. I know you still do a lot of deals in the space. But what are you seeing talent talk about, the way they want to show up in innovation? How are they viewing industry? And like, how has that whole landscape, in your opinion, changed um, since like 10 years ago?
So a couple things. I mean, spending a lot of time in creators, like the one thing that I have to remind myself and others that I'm working with, like a lot of the media companies, especially when I was a very early stage hire, or if it was, a startup, we didn't have a lot of site traffic, 10 years ago, probably more, like 15 years ago. So we were working with creators in spaces that
Yeah.
they were known to like drive traffic, to like create, um, just scale basically, especially for ad partners, but also just generally traffic.
Hmm.
So having worked with creators for a long time, they were essentially in my mind, um, really amplifying content or a
Yeah.
part of
Yes.
content and bringing their audiences to our website,
Hmm.
before it was like to our space on a platform. And so over, I would say like the past probably 5 years, um, it was the same theme everywhere I went, right? We needed scale, we needed more impressions. How do we get that when it's digital? Like we can work with creators. Um, at Group Black, like while we were building up the collective of Black owned media companies, we had brands that we were working with that had initiatives that
Yeah.
we, had the ability to like really kind of work with. And so I had to use creators because we didn't have like the media all
Yes.
cohesive. And so I worked with a ton of creators and really started to see that, yes, they're creating content on the behalf of brands or creating content because they have these loyal fans that they've built, over time. They're like perceived as an authority in some area. But often they have like bigger dreams and like bigger goals. And so I feel like
Absolutely.
that's just the theme today, right? Like
Yes.
people that started as an influencer there's so many examples. Like I don't even want to say like all the obvious examples, but there are a lot of little examples too, where like now they're small business owners
Yes,
outside of
correct.
what they
Yeah.
do on social media.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really interesting and kind of in line with the ability to be an entrepreneur and start a business today. Like the cost of entry, the barrier to entry is so much lower. And you can run, when I started working in media and tech, I remember like when I was first exposed to like VC, it was like growth at all cost and how much money can we raise and all these things. And then when I took like a step back, and I think maybe from like spending time in a turnaround with very limited resources and very high expectations and it being a public company, I was like, okay, I have to think differently. This is not growth at all costs. This is very different. The strategy needed to be very different. And it just made me more responsible. So now, like, I think I was early in thinking, like, let's be responsible. Let's not like overspend. Like, what is right for our constituents, whether it's B2B or B2C, like how do we just run a responsible business that's like focused on excellent work? And that doesn't mean, like I don't want to talk about how many people we're hiring. You know what I mean? It's just like, do we have the right people? And so I
Yes. Yeah.
love kind of where we are today, where like technology, especially if you're like digital first or like tech native, you just know innately like your whole life is programmed around access to like data and content, and your thinking is different, and therefore it's just like building a business becomes something that you're capable of doing, not knowing all of the legacy issues that like hurdles that you used to have to go through. So I think you'll see, and like the headlines are that there are going to be so many more small businesses because it's easier to like pop up a small business if you have an idea and you're able to grow a following and you're passionate about something. And I love that.
I love that too. I feel like influencers had to go somewhere, and just because they had to become responsible for putting out their own content, yes, so many of them have sort of become their own entrepreneurs and founders, whether it's in collaboration or partnership with a major brand that they've collaborated. I mean, Rihanna's obviously a perfect example. I mean, she's right at the top, but where she's
Yeah, but
partnered with
then
all
at
the
the same time, I think like on the flip side of that, a lot of brands, right, like companies that are manufacturing or delivering products and services now have like pretty viable content teams. Coming from Condé Nast, where I feel like I got like an MBA in like premium content, we now like every brand has a pretty spectacular content team, and I'm like always there's a number that I think are really impressive, which like really know the channel well and really like do a good job of, keeping the brand relevant, hopefully, like driving sales or ROI, whatever their KPIs are.
yes.
But I think that that's really important. So like all of these people who are experts at creating content now have these other places to go
Yes,
where
for
they can
sure.
like, really make an impact in growing a business if that's what they're
Absolutely.
interested in.
No, for sure. And I remember when we had a catch up call, was that like a month ago? Several weeks ago? I don't know if it was closer that anyway,
Yeah.
it was recent. Um, you mentioned something on that call that has stuck with me, which is because I'm curious about your take on culture. You know, in LA, I was explaining this on a call yesterday, um, the narratives, the calls, the context of conversations I'm having now and today are very, very different from what I was having in LA, where it was
Oh,
all about
interesting.
how do you sustain, how do you replicate, how do you grow, how do you nurture, how do you ABCXYZ culture. How do you
Huh.
build culture? How do you go viral culturally? What does your guerrilla, it was all about culture, sustaining culture, brokering culture, being the pioneers of culture. What is your take on culture, and how does that intersect with this new line of thinking, which I don't even say it's a new line of thinking, it just is. It's the world we're in today, which is the new majority. Talk to
Oh,
me and
right.
share
Yeah.
some of the context about the new majority and how that intersects with culture and how brands are trying to show up in culture. I don't know whether it's the same or differently.
Yeah, so I like have a little bit of an issue of using the word culture because it means so many things, and
Right.
so like there's so many different contexts.
Yeah.
And usually from a media perspective, I understand what the implications are, or what
Mm-hmm.
the
Nuances
nuance
and
of. Yeah. And so I think like from technology and in some other spaces, it means other things,
it
right?
does.
Like,
Totally.
so I think like really I ask this question a lot to people that are like experts in AI, where I'm like, okay, if everybody has a voice, right? Like the playing field is more level than ever from a content perspective. If everyone has a voice, and like I come from the days where like Vogue was the authority on fashion, and then since Instagram, there's like tons of influencers who are like authoritative in like fashion and these other areas.
Hmm.
And today, like literally at every turn, there's like some expert somewhere telling me about fashion. So I just wonder, like, in the age of like personalization and everyone having a voice, where the trends are going to come from.
Right.
Like, how do you define culture? Because I don't know if I'm only being served like what I like, right? Like, how am I experiencing the things that I don't know about, which is what's of interest to me?
Well, that's a great taking off point for culture, is that there is no one or other or definition of it. And it really depends, like to our earlier sort of points of conversation about the proliferation of market in industry and greater polarization, all these different things, but at the same time, greater intersection. It's weird, but it is what it is. There's 50 billion layers of culture depending on state, city, industry, talent
Right.
type, like sect. I mean,
I
all the
almost feel
things. So
like
you're
the
right.
the word has lost a lot of value because the
Yes.
meaning
Yeah. It's been.
is so splintered in
Yes.
so many ways.
Yeah.
And like, especially when you look at, so I love the packaging. It's like really kind of like marketing speak of the new majority, which one of the co-founders I was working with used on a call, and I was like, what's this new majority? I love how it sounds. And then I started doing a lot of research, and then I met some people, like some founders that are working in the new, like they have a business called New Majority Ready, like awesome creative entrepreneurial people.
Awesome.
And so I'm like, this is so interesting because basically what they're talking about, which is kind of what we've structured this as, which has become a series that we're launching later in the year called New Majority Meetups, which are essentially, like I mentioned earlier, the three youngest generations. So it's essentially everyone. It's very inclusive under the age
Hmm.
of 44, which is where millennials top out at. And, the behaviors that exist across these different generations, right? Because like we're just from a research perspective, from a marketing perspective, accustomed to thinking like generationally.
Yeah,
And I feel like
for
that's
sure.
so monolithic in its thinking, because like you look at Gen Z and there's like all of these trends and these pockets within it. So I just think that culture is like a catch-all word for maybe like measurements outside of like age, race, ethnicity, like, like
Yeah.
it's kind of like a compilation of genres in my mind. But as things become like so personalized, I just don't know that it has like all that much value. Except that people are always going to be like doing things that are culturally, like whether it's music or fashion or like, the arts.
And I feel like talent are just biting off more and more as well. Like once upon a time, you were obviously more severely bucketed, and there's just more scope to be free if you're a singer, dancer, but creative director, and also a technologist, but you're also a tap dancer, and
Yeah,
you're
but that was
also,
the theme of our podcast, remember? Which I
yeah,
loved. And to this
yeah,
day, I still think was
yeah,
like so smart, like being a multi
yeah, I
hyphenate.
agree.
Like everyone I
Yeah,
know is a multi hyphenate. I don't know a single
exactly.
person that does just one thing. And that was like, 6 years ago when we did that.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, that was the premise of my business Outlier at the time was we were managing multi-hyphenate, like create like diverse creators that were doubling as like talent and sublime artistry. So they were creative directors, motion graphic artists, 3D animators, and a whole range of things. Then it was that slash
but it's
talent
like a very
economy.
human experience, right?
Yeah.
Like people are multidimensional.
Yes,
They're obviously
exactly.
going to have like a lot of different interests. And
Yeah.
again, I feel like that just became a way to think about like marketing. And it kind of goes back to like my data, like the days of learning data with all these like super prolific data scientists, where my mind was blown every day because I'm like, that person, I think, like goes in this bucket, but I know all these other things now based on behavior, and it's like very eye-opening. It's not predictable. And so I think that's just the reality of like we as humans, how we behave.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say that you are most excited about? Like either a project that you're working on now today, whether it is the show that you just mentioned, project you just mentioned, or something else. Yeah, what is making you super excited now and today? And then also, what sort of excites you about the future, which of course is incredibly unpredictable. We've got no idea what's around the corner, but if you imagined a future that looked and felt great to you, what would that entail? And what
Well,
excites you about it?
sure. So first of all, I'm like a super optimist. Um, And I don't know, like my goal right now, I've always had, even before I joined Group Black as employee number one, like that I was actually I was building in my mind like this portfolio of projects that I would work on so
Hmm.
that I would have my hands in all these areas and be
For
learning and
sure.
adding value. And
Yeah.
like I get like work FOMO. So like that was my goal. And then I ended up at building Group Black for like 2 years. It was like a great experience. And now I'm kind of back to like, okay, blockchain, like that's interesting. I spent some time there. I just have to figure out how much time I can spend different places and like
Right.
how much time I have and like what my role and responsibility is in these different
Hmm.
things. And so like I do like some advisory and I do a lot of consulting, but I really like building, like I like early stage
Same.
building. So I'm like working with a media startup that like recently went out on their own, was like owned by somebody else, so it's kind of like a reboot. Super cool, Gen Z. So I have media, I have this new project that isn't signed yet, but I'm so excited about it, that's like experiential. But like what I was explaining to them today is like everything we do is going to have creators involved in it. That's just a given. Like that's always going to be a line item because it's always going to help us connect to whomever
Yes,
we're looking to connect
for
with.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so sure, we can still work with like NBC and Condé Nast or whatever, but we can get so much scale and influence
Yes,
working with
still through the,
creators. And
yeah.
I just feel like that's such a big part of media as I like build out programming. Um, so what excites me is being able to like put this puzzle together, which is like what I'm spending my time on. And so some things might last like 6 months, some things might last 3 years, like really kind of like devising a plan that keeps me happy and like keeps me learning, keeps me engaged, makes me
Yes.
excited, but I still
Yeah.
get to go to the gym and I'm not like losing my mind. You know what I mean? And I'm still traveling and like
Yes.
connecting people. That's like my
Yes.
favorite thing. You do that so well.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. Yeah. That sounds amazing. You just mentioned media programming. When we were working together, I was just like, God, she's so talented. With that, just like came, obviously, it comes so naturally to you, obviously, because of your background, your experience. But for those that are not familiar with media programming in today's discombobulated media landscape, also with the rise of AI, like give an example of what media programming could look like for a brand and or creator or collaboration there, and sort of break that down and how you sort of think about it when you are pursuing it for clients.
Yeah, so it means a lot of different things, right? Like I'm not looking for an easy way out, but depending on an objective,
And
right? If
that's the end.
if
You're
a
like,
company is trying to accomplish something, the ways in which to do it, like from a highly efficient and effective way, right? Like looking at the budget and then looking at like the
it's a good
outcomes that
starting
we're
point.
trying to achieve and what we have to work with to
Yeah.
start with. Um, you know, we used to say integrated and then we said
Right.
like 360 and
Yeah.
then we said like omni-channel. So it's like
Yeah.
really figuring out like the different lanes or pipes or like parts of the funnel to make these outcomes happen. So, there could be like streaming involved, there could be like
Right. Yeah.
paid advertising, there could be original content involved, there's like shoulder content,
Mhm.
there's of course social, there could be like different types of not, very traditional or like more unexpected people involved from a content creation perspective or distribution perspective. And then, of course, there's like in real life, like experiential, and then making sure that that's like a very cohesive plan and that we're like optimized, right? So,
It's
like, we're
so
getting as
good
much,
because when people ask me what areas of marketing I do, I'm like, I literally do all of it, like you
right?
do, because you can easily do strategic marketing and connect the dots, maximize interoperability, ensure all the ecosystems digitally are connected and how everything's speaking to one another. But that is literally great advice, because our advice in building AI is the same thing. Don't even think about coming up with an idea or barking up a certain tree if you don't have the actual budgets to sustain the project. And is this a one-off thing? Is it a short-term solution? Is it this? Is
Right.
it that? There's a lot of consulting that actually goes in to determine what's going to be right for a client. And then the owned media play, like establishing podcasts, is it worth it? Is it not? Is it a waste
Yeah.
of time? It's an oversaturated marketplace, when it wasn't 10 years ago. So it was a very innovative, idea back then. It's just funny to see how much
But I
shape
think it
shifts.
really starts with the data, right? Like, who are you looking to connect with, or who is your core customer or prospect, and like, where are they, and like, how are they spending their time, and where are they behaving? Because there's just so many options
Yeah.
today. Like, the number of emails that I signed up for and that I pay for, and now like Substack,
You're
it's
like,
just like almost painful.
yeah.
Where I'm like, I'm not going to sweat it. Like, I'm just going to do what I need and like use a lot of summaries
Hmm.
because it's going to work itself out. Like people can't like sustain this amount of information all the time. And I'm starting to notice like a lot of duplication. So I'm like, why do I have to pay? Why do I pay to read someone to curate an email for me that links through to like the paid subscriptions that I have? Like the whole
Hmm.
thing just doesn't make any sense. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just really interesting. And I like that it's like exciting. It's exciting to me because while I find that annoying, there's other things that are actually going to like evolve into something that's going to be really meaningful. Like, I don't know what that is. And so I think it's just part of the process. Um,
You've mentioned data a couple of times now, which is amazing. And I love that. And it's so critical. And again, like going for working more traditional spaces with talent and all the rest, to then slowly transitioning, doing the Web3 river crossover into AI on the other side of the fence. Um, one thing that we say we do, which is what you're speaking to, is, there's no point in building amazing technology and having epic solutions and a great product that everyone's proud of and likes to use behind closed doors unless you have the data, but first off, a really killer brand. So the brand architecture in place, really understanding your strategic marketing position with customers so that you can acquire them, so that you can grow, so you can start generating income, so you can scale, so you can sustain, so you can replicate, do whatever it is that you need to do, but data, 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 data.
Right.
And so I know you've already touched on it a couple of times, but speak a little bit more to the importance of data and how you advise clients on capturing data, or what it all means to you and how you can advise people on it. How do you
Well,
leverage it?
it's kind of a baseline, right? It's like your
You
foundation,
would think, yeah.
understanding like who your customers are and what they think of your product or your service, like how they're engaged with your business. Like that, you need to know that. And the data company that I worked for in, I think it was like 2011, a lot of the luxury brands who I had sold advertising to for years were just starting to build their CRMs. So when I would get into like Gucci Group or Bergdorf Goodman or NetJets or, Tiffany, Ralph Lauren, like they didn't really know anything about their customers.
Right.
I mean, I have one client that did not know that like 99%
Right.
of their customers
Yeah.
were all male.
It's crazy how much.
So when
Yeah.
when you look at the data, and then you work with these like rocket scientists that are like data specialists and they're
Yes.
able to see these patterns.
Yes.
And then you're able to like append data and follow trends, like, and then you can predict like behavior based on, analytics. It's just so valuable. There's just no need to guess anymore, I guess is my point. And especially when it comes to advertising, like you just don't have to guess. And even in some of like the more traditional spaces, now that like print is having a renaissance, like this very niche like print experience, it's like premium
It
limited. You see
seems,
like
yeah.
Palmer and Palm
Mhm.
Beach and mountains in upstate New York. Like there's just a number of them, and they're super cool, and I love them. But they're very niche, and there's ways to measure things today that didn't exist before. So data allows you to do measurement, and that helps you make more informed decisions. So I
Yes.
can't imagine like just guessing. I remember a time when we guessed, but like
It is crazy just still in the world of thriving technology, like exacerbating technology from all the things, Web 2, 3, AI through to AI, all the rest. It still like shocks me how many technologists still don't understand the importance of customer and data. So,
well, the
I have these
application of
conversations
it,
all the time.
I think
Yeah,
they like with a lot of like the very like the technical people that I work with, what I realize is they don't understand the real world everyday
right.
application of
Yes.
their knowledge.
Yes.
And so like that
It's a
language,
very
like
common disconnect.
and that's where the opportunity is
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
mind, which I think is
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yes, agreed, for sure. We're definitely on the same page there. I can see that we're sort of inching closer to the hour. I wanted to ask you what advice that you would impart with any, consultant or aspiring brand, talent, media person, how to sort of penetrate the industry. What types of jobs would be good for them to sort of look into and look at and look for today, knowing how much is going to continue to shapeshift in the future?
So I'm not sure that I have the best like advice from a jobs perspective, but what
Just
I
make
would just
something up. No,
say
I'm kidding.
most generally is like just get out there and like meet people who are doing the things that you're interested in doing. Like
Yeah.
I still do that today. Like when
Yeah.
I started in New York and I worked at Women's Wear Daily, like I didn't know anyone in the industry, and I would have to go to every event by myself for like 2 years, and I met so many people, and it just like really helped me understand how important it is to go to things by yourself. I mean, granted, I have a lot of relationships in a lot of different spaces now, but I still, in some spaces, go to things by myself because I'm really interested in learning like what's
Good.
going on there. So I think like just putting yourself out there, and also it's so easy to learn online. It's just so easy. Like there's so many places. So I would definitely try to learn as much as possible about the area that I'm interested in. You know, I wouldn't necessarily call myself an expert. There's so many people that I've met that are like experts on things that have not done anything in that area, and I'm amazed by that. But I think you can easily learn and, you know, meet people, and that's kind of how the opportunities open up in my experience.
I think you've hit some very true points, being like the good old classic in-person relationship building network. Like once you have that relationship, it's always going to speak volumes, and it's a domino effect of one relationship can lead to the next, to the next, to the next. And before you know it, you're able to connect with or work with, you know, whoever, and it's amazing. So good old classic networking is great. And you mentioned curiosity, which is, I'm huge on that. Like I research stuff every day.
Yeah,
I'm
you're one of like the most curious people I know. I always remember like you always I can talk to you about anything. Like you have an opinion on it, or like you like dabbled in it, or you're like spent a lot of time in it. And there's a lot of people I know that have like no idea what's going on in the world.
Yeah, they
like,
just
wow.
stay in their lanes, don't ask questions.
But that's okay. Like that's very different, you know?
Yeah. I mean, everyone's got their place, but I do fully support your point about curiosity. I think it's just so important to continue to stay with the times. And if you have your finger on the pulse of all of things, you will also have a sense as to how to navigate the future. And, you know, do you make and move in the direction of sort of choice and option A versus B, you know, and having that intuition as a result.
Yeah, I think like your own intuition is something that I've really, I mean, I definitely spent a lot of time really understanding more about that. And I think that that's like
awesome.
really valuable as well. So
Good. Yeah. Well, I love that, Miss Thing. Thank you so much for your time. We could talk for hours, but
I
trying
know.
to keep, you know, the discussions within podcast suitable, you know, time frames. But I look forward to hopefully seeing you here in Atlanta soon. You're welcome to come and visit anytime. And of course, I'm going to get my ass
take
up
you
to
up on that someday soon.
Yeah. And I've got to get my ass back up to New York, you know, again
Definitely.
too. So, but appreciate you. Thank you for sharing all your gems and insights and wisdom. I look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
You're
I love
welcome.
it. Thanks, Georgie. Talk to you soon.
Unfiltered. Like in another world, like you zoned out.